All right, welcome back, guys. This is the start of the build for the Archer from Tamiya again, or Tamiya. Starting with, and I know we looked at this in a review, but starting with the lower hull, of course, not a bathtub style hull, which is pretty common now in a lot of the new Tamiya kits, but they go together amazingly. You see me dry fitting parts. It's still good practice, but you don't have to. It goes together that well. There are moments, many actually, in this kit where pieces actually snap together. You'll see at the end, and I went a little bit overboard. Um, I didn't really glue anything on the outside, like what would be a kind of like the turret ring. I know it's a fixed gun, but I didn't glue any of the sides or anything into place. Now, doing it again, I would have glued maybe 50% more than I did. Um, but it is nice to be able to reach the inside to do some minor weathering. Um, I don't know. You'll see in that video kind of once I glue everything up to do some final pigment steps. It was a little difficult to get in there. So hopefully you can learn something from this video and say, hey, I'll do it that way or I won't do it that way, right? It's kind of the purpose of these. But I do skip quite a bit. I mean, it's still a long video, but it's a Tamiya kit. It's pretty straightforward. Um, there aren't too many moments where I'd be like, "Hey, let's point, that one thing out." Um, but it's a great kit, really, really great kit. I know, Tamiya can be basic, whatever, but it's a fun kit. I think it took it was about 8.5 hours. Now, this is my first recorded build. I don't know why I left the camera rolling for 8.5 hours, so I promise that's how I know how long it took. These will get better. These will get a little bit quicker. Just growing pains, right? So I had fun story while you see some of these panel lines and things get lined up, or not panel lines, but interior panels for the driver there. Um, you'll see some, I think it was a rust tracks color. I don't know. Obviously, it's some kind of brown that has been exploded. That was an ammo by MiG bottle. It tipped upside down to put a drop in the pallet, and it exploded on the masking tape, on the glue, on the table. So actually went all over me. So that was a nice cleanup. Make sure that no paint has dried around the tip, or else, you know. So just looking at the fit here, you wouldn't know that it's not a bathtub style hull. It's actually probably, to me, some of the most enjoyable parts of building these new Tamiya kits. Um, I mean, I'm holding it in place, obviously, but it's almost stuck on there. I don't know quite how they do the engineering. It's just one little tiny lip of plastic, but I barely even have to press it in on the end there to get the perfect fit. So that'll give you an idea. That's how everything goes together in this kit. There's not much like the only difficulty is having the knowledge that some things will snap in. You'll be sitting there being like, oh, how do I, this, do I have to force it? Like a little bit, yes. Um, a little bit of it has to be forced, but you see right there, I didn't even put glue on, and that piece is just sitting there, right? It's that good of a fit. The kit comes obviously with some complexities, it being an open kind of turret area, hatch, whatever you want to call it. Um, but it's not like a US vehicle where it's painted white inside, it's still painted the same. So, minus the interior details, the bags and things, it it's a good step for someone that has never done an interior, this is a really good step into that. Um, the build is definitely a little bit, I would say it's like an intermediate or maybe even above for Tamiya. Um, it might still be in a beginner build in comparison to other model kits out there. Um, I'd say intermediate is still probably pretty fair. Um, it was like 7 or 8 sprues, I think, which is a lot for Tamiya. So if you're used to building some of their older kits, this is a very, very good kit to kind of, I guess, bring you into the future. Uh, do something a little bit more difficult. Again, 8.5 hours includes building, but that's also cutting off the sprue, sanding, getting rid of seam lines, injector pin marks, that sort of thing. So it's still a weekend build. It doesn't count the weathering and everything like that, but there aren't a ton of on the subject of seam lines. Um, you'll see shortly. There's a seam line on like every wheel. That's pretty common. I actually don't know if I've ever not had to sand road wheels. So the nice part is there's only one. It's not a set of two. But in terms of injector pin marks, this is to me where Tamiya always shines. It's only really, and I show it in this video, it's only really on the inside of the side panels, I think, where I noticed an injector pin mark that, like, okay, that one has to go. I won't take them out of everything. I try to do my best to figure out which ones will show, which ones won't, and if they won't show, I'm not going to bother, to be completely honest. But a lot of nice interior parts here, which is another fun part of the build. The little ammo racks and everything. Now, there is a good amount that I end up leaving off. Depending on how you build it, you could definitely you could have glued on more than I did, to be fair. I guess I'm caught in a slightly old school mentality. There are things that I at least prime on the sprue. Um, some things that you know I just paint, hand brush, and then put on the kit afterwards. But to each their own. I don't have I have a single action airbrush. It's a nice airbrush, but I don't have the ability to get as finely detailed as some. So maybe that's part of it. But I'm also using the. I think I'm the only person to ever post a YouTube video to use the regular Tamiya cement. When I started, I think I bought like 3 or 4 of them, and maybe even after that, I kept buying them. I still like it. You have to be very careful. What you don't like the extra thin is amazing because you can more or less stick a part on and it's glued instantly. So it does allow you to keep building. Where that traditional cement, you see me kind of press it in, hold it for a second. After like 10 seconds, it's pretty held with the normal cement, but I'm trying to wear through my stash of it a little bit. I don't want 3 bottles just sitting in there. It was money I spent, so I'm trying to use it at least on some of the lower hull and things that doesn't matter if I get a little extra paint somewhere. But good little build on the lower hull. It's honestly probably about, I know it's about half the kit, but there's a lot of good detail that goes into it. Normally, a lot of these things would have come on attached to a bathtub style hull. So it's nice to see Tamiya going in a direction that, for me, the most enjoyable part is the gluing and the actual building. Right, it's like adult Lego. So This is the part I enjoy most. So I'm glad they're making the builds a little bit more complicated without it being too much. I have no interest in, 1,000 pieces, maybe like 400 to 500, something like that. I don't know. I don't know the exact count off the top of my head, but I enjoy spending a lot of time building without being overly frustrated. So there you go. And there's some nice. You can actually see where the driver's sitting once the sides and everything are on top. So that's one of the reasons I left things off, was so that you can still reach in there, um, dry brush in there, do a little wash in there to bring out some of those details, get a little mud by the feet, that sort of thing. It's not the most noticeable. You do have to look for it, but it is all visible in there. Um, on the right hand side, if you're looking at the camera of the kind of where the crew's going to stand, that gets covered a little bit by the gun, but depending on which way you turn it, it is still visible. So I did think it was important to leave a lot open just to be able to weather that, or else you're going to have some weathered parts and some completely clean parts. Um, Suspension, again, in typical Tamiya fashion, they've broken it down into several parts, but it's impossible to get it wrong. Um, these new Tamiya kits, especially, but honestly, even in the old ones, they do a really good job of making it so parts can only go on one way. Having a smaller or a larger kind of pin that inserts things like that, um, which is awesome. It does take it's a little bit of brain power, but at the same time, you're not going to be ripping something off that you glued on the night before and wondering if you should just throw the kit out, right? I think we've all been there with other kits and things, but suspension goes together pretty well. It's like 5 pieces, 6 pieces per side, and there's 4 of them total. So I'm getting to the end of my extra thin cement there. Trying again to use it to it every last drop. Obviously, be careful. I pressed this a little bit too much. You can see the glue come out of the seams there. It's okay. It can be sanded away. Um, Generally, with extra thin, at least in my experience, the benefit of it is it flows into the cracks and it kind of sucks the plastic together, which is very nice. Tamiya extra thin with Tamiya plastic is like a match made in heaven, which is why I think a lot of people obviously use it, aside from the quick drying kind of thing. So again, really, it just clicks in. There's not much chance of messing it up, which again makes it enjoyable, especially when it comes to things like suspension and road wheels. It's very easy on some kits to have wobbly wheels where they don't all touch the ground. Suspension that isn't completely lined up. I did dry fit again everything on here, and it's still good practice. Uh, but you don't need to be completely honest. Everything will touch the ground. Everything will be flat. Everything will go right where it needs to go, which is very, very nice. And one of these days, I will get a new cutting mat. I know it's covered in glue and paint, but kind of adds to the character, I hope. So there is a little bit of attention that needs to be paid here. This is one place You see how the suspension has one per side? You're going to get two and two that you're going to build up, and it's going to have an A and B on one side and A and B on the other. So that is one of the only times in which you need to pay attention. Those springs, need to be facing each other. Aside from that, it would still, I guess the kit would still function, although there are some larger road wheels that are going to go on the far left and far right. So maybe it would look funky. So definitely pay attention to that piece there. That is an important thing. Now, here again, talked about the one seam on the road wheels, as well as you know the sprue gate where it was attached on there. Um, you'd be very surprised. All of my road wheels are going to look very, very rough, especially even after I end up gluing them on pre-painting. If you ever want to check, um, great way to do it is just to wet the wheels or any part that you've sanded for that matter. If it shows when it's wet, it will show when it's painted. Um, seam lines, again, the sprue gates, things like that. So I always go over it with about a 300, I think a 320 grit, and then I usually go over just with a quick 1200. And that's smooth enough that I've never noticed any, sanding marks, anything like that. I always make sure it's somewhat smooth. I mean, I might do it pretty quickly, but nothing too crazy. Now, this is something that I did not do in my, I guess, I always modeled as a kid and then stopped and then came back as a younger adult. But um, when I came back to it, I did not sand. It's not something that you have to do. If you enjoy the hobby as is, that's fine. I did for a long time before I was like, okay, let's kind of get it to the next level, right? And start making, I guess, making it look a little bit more real. But these wheels do have to be glued on, which I do find, and there's no sound from the video, but they snap in. Um, if you put it on without snapping it in, it'll be wobbly. It won't feel right. It'll fall right off. So make sure that when you put those on, you are getting, see, I kind of have to press there. It wobbled for a second, and then it clicked right in. So it is really, really nice. But you do have to glue them on, which makes brush painting a little bit more difficult, but not too bad because they're not really crammed in there. And I left the tracks off. So building of the tracks, these ended up giving me, we'll say, some agita later, but Lincoln length tracks, while not my favorite, they do build up fairly easily. Tamiya gives you a nice top and bottom run, so you're really only gluing up, I guess, probably maybe 30% of the tracks, singularly. But this is definitely where the extra thin cement really comes in handy. It does dry quickly, but for whatever reason on these tracks, it makes them pliable. It makes you able to bend them. So I know a lot of newer kits come with a jig. I would still recommend doing it the same way. I would glue them up and then put them on the jig. If you glue them on the jig, you might do very much that and glue them on the jig. So once you have them all glued up, you'll see it's already bending in my hand a little bit. It takes about 5 minutes maybe um, for that to all kind of at least solidify. It's still flexible, but for them not to fall apart when you pick them up. And then once you have them on, you can, waiting for myself to do it, you can just bend them right around that road wheel. Now you might have to hold them for a little bit. Again, I left the tracks off. I wanted to paint and weather them separately, which from a painting and weathering standpoint, they look amazing, I think. It's a little bit more difficult to build them. See, I got to kind of hold it there until it finishes. But the other piece I would recommend is doing all the tracks. Make sure you have some time because you want to get them, especially where I just fitted them together there. You want to get that done all at once. At least one side should be done all at one time in order to get that correct shape if you're going to keep them off. I mean, I guess even if you're going to keep them on, you probably still want to do that, but you want to make sure that they will have some flexibility, and if you're like me, they will break apart after you weather them. Some of those enamel products and things make them quite brittle, so or you just missed a little piece of didn't put enough extra thin, that kind of thing. So get them in the right place. Um, I end up using some tape at the end, some like Tamiya masking tape, basically just to hold them in place, make sure they don't fall apart, and then let them dry on each side. Don't touch them. Make sure that they take that shape. And you can always kind of make sure that you're in the right spot because there is a little bit of track sag on that top run, so you can always make sure that where my right hand middle finger is there, that it's lined up where it needs to be. Now, I've found on other Tamiya kits, and I tried on this kit. I did the exact, and I forget how many it tells you, but it tells you in the kit. It's like 100 links per side, let's say. On one side, I did one extra piece, and on one side, I did not. I did what the kit told me to do. In the past, I have found that Tamiya is their tracks are very tight. Honestly, from a rubber band tracks perspective and from link and length. So the one extra track per side, when I went to put it on at the end, it might have a little bit, it might look a little bit bulky if you really looked at it, you really studied it, you might be like, yeah, maybe it does look like there's one extra per side. It would be hard to notice. The side that I did the exact specifications of the kit, those tracks broke maybe 6 or 7 times when I was trying to, glue that piece in at the end. I ended up separating the top and the lower hole in a place. They were tight. They were tight on there. There is the tiniest of gaps where I connected them. So maybe something to consider, when building this kit is just slot one extra singular track in there because the kit gives you, I think it was like 6 extras. So there's a couple extras you can put in there. And um, again, one side of the tracks was much easier for me to put on after painting and weathering. And one side, you know, I started Googling workable tracks to see what my alternatives were in case, I really butchered it. But we're building up the gun right now. This is a great piece. You see the chair was holding in place there, but this is great because you do end up cementing where I'm holding my left index finger. Um, you cement that in place, but the entire gun rotates. You can snap it in and out of the upper hole. So I didn't glue the upper hole on at first. Um, that was I probably could have done that. There wasn't really any reason for me to leave it off. I just did because I was worried again I wouldn't be able to get into the interior. But there's a box that goes on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. You see now the box is on. That box and the upper hole should go on together. You should put the upper hole on before that box in the bottom left goes on. Um, that gave me some trouble later because there's a tiny little piece that overhangs. That was just an oversight by me. I was able to kind of flex it around it, so not a big deal, but it is kind of one of those scary moments where you're like, I hope the plastic bends enough, right? So something to definitely keep in mind if you do, build in parts. If you don't have to worry about it. But this back plate, which I guess is depends how you look at this tank. Here you go. Here's some of the important injector pin marks that I think you do have to take off this kit, because a lot of those will be visible. Some will be covered up with bags. I didn't really, I kind of indiscriminately just took them all out. Um, but that is definitely something that would end up showing, at least on the interior of this kit. But since the vehicle kind of drove backwards, kind of shot backwards, whichever way you look at it, that driver plate on the left hand side, the one that has the little length of tracks that go on it, that is the plate that I would leave off. Um, had I gone back and done this again, I would have just attached the sides. I still would have painted all the bags separately because I like to have that, perfectly clean look. But this piece right here, um, is really the only piece, and maybe the piece that goes around the front of the gun. Those I guess are the two pieces that I would have left off. And then I guess that I mean this piece can't really go on until that back plate goes on, but that's not a big deal. That slots right in place there. Now, kind of in the final steps, um, these boxes, and you'll see I leave like the tools off. So this is, we'll call it a 98% build video. But these all snap into place again. You do have to make sure, like right there, um, that you get them in the perfect position because they can go on either side of it, but you'll feel it snap together much better. Um, and that's another good tip. Put both those on at the same time because it's not 1,000% clear. That box on the left, which ridges it goes over until you put the other box on. And this is a good tip here, especially if you have fat fingers like I do. Some of these tiny little pieces, um, like the grab handles, I end up putting on, and I know because I'm shoving that close to my face to make sure I'm not sanding off extra detail. It's hard to see, but I attach the grab handles and then sand them once the glue's dried. I find that to be a much easier process than holding that tiny little grab handle in place. And of course, there you can see where the exhaust meets. I leave the exhaust off just to be able to paint and weather that separately, but I guess you didn't have to do that. Um, it's a little bit difficult to get it to snap in there, but it's not overly difficult. It's definitely doable in this kit to leave the exhaust off until the end. So here we're just building up, and this is a piece that I left off till the end. I would not advise doing that. This was probably the most difficult piece to get in. You'll see it circled on my page there, just because it's like chrome and gunmetal. I think I left a note that I didn't glue it. It will fall out when you put the gun, mantlet into the vehicle, um, and then you're going to have to attach it from the bottom. So I would not advise doing that. I'd glue that in there, and just do your best to brush paint it after the fact. That was one I wish I did. I mean, it only took me a couple minutes to get it in there, but I'm pain nonetheless. Something I didn't have to do. You'll see, I mean, even gluing the sides of that gun up and then putting that back piece on, it just spit right in there. There are really no fit issues. There isn't a single bit of flash on this kit. I mean, it's very new still. So I wouldn't have expected it anyways, but we do get poly caps for the gun, which is nice. It allows it to rotate and everything, and then you'll see this piece right here. I did not glue that. I don't know if the directions specify that or not, but it fits so tightly. This is a little bit difficult to get in there, not gonna lie. Um, Definitely need some pliers and not fat fingers, but once you get that in there, it really locks into the poly caps. So there's no glue needed. I think if you did glue it, honestly, it might inhibit. There's too good of a risk. That's a piece you will not see. There's too good of a risk of it, getting glue into the poly cap, and then the gun won't go up and down, that sort of thing. So you'll see once I get into the perfect position right here, it just pops right in, and that's locked in there. Almost as good as glue, we'll say. And this is how you see that box had to slide it out of the way in order to get that to fit under there. So that's a tight fit, that little box in the bottom right. Um, the gun, see that piece fell out right there. That's what you have to attach later. So definitely attach that first. But see, the gun fits very easily into the upper hole if you leave it separate. So that's not a problem at all. It is I guess it's a slide molded turret that comes in one piece. The muzzle brake is in two pieces. Um, so you do have to sand one side of the gun. It's not a lot of sanding. There's a little seam line there, but huge improvement over a two-piece turret. It's kind of annoying. You still have to do the muzzle in two, but it's an improvement. So this is again that piece, not where I'm inserting the gun into, but the piece that goes over. That's another one I would definitely leave off. That you could leave off until the last second. Where it gets glued, you don't see. It basically sticks on the model, and again will allow you to kind of access the gun and get some of that interior and stuff painted up. So I guess the front and back plate, whichever way you look at it, I think are the most important to leave off. Again, to be able to weather and detail the inside and everything. But finishing up some last details here, you'll see that I actually don't have really any of the upper hole besides the boxes and things, but I don't have anything glued on really at the end, the sides, the front, and the back. Um, Even the gun isn't glued in at this point, and you'll see I have the ability to handle the model without anything falling off. So that speaks to the fit. In general, it's an amazing kit. I would give it like a 9.7, right, out of 10. Um, I don't know what would make up the point three. Maybe the tracks, just because personally I don't like Lincoln length, but they do end up looking good in this kit. So that's about it. Um, Next video, we're gonna get it painted and weathered. We're just gonna do base green paint. Nothing too crazy. Again, nothing too crazy on the weathering, but really, really great kit. As I said earlier, if you built some of the older kits and you're looking to kind of, I don't know, maybe work a little bit harder, work a little bit smarter, this is a really great kit to kind of get you in tune with building an interior, the steps taken in which, you can build a kit in a lot of pieces, right? And it can come together at the end and look like it was built in one. So I would definitely recommend. Um, I would totally build this kit again. Now I have plenty in the stash and in my mind that I want to build before I did it again, but very, very happy with how this came together. And appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course. That'll very much help me. Why I didn't glue that piece in, I don't know. forgot to paint that until the end. Had to whip out the airbrush just for that one piece. But um, yeah, really, really nice kit. And it's unique. I like building kind of unique things. So this fits the bill kind of across the board. But thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.